Welcome, brave souls, to the realm of the unknown. Here in the heart of darkness, we unravel the chilling tales that lurk in the shadows, stories that will grip your imagination and chill you to the core. Prepare yourself for spine-tingling narratives that delve into the depths of fear, where every whisper holds a secret and every shadow conceals a terror. Join our community of thrill seekers as we explore the macabre, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying. But remember, once you enter, there's no turning back. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a moment of our haunting adventures. Are you ready to embrace the fear? The darkness awaits. Lena Marshall loved old languages. She spent her whole life studying ancient writing and strange symbols. She loved dusty, forgotten libraries, searching for lost knowledge. One day a fancy invitation arrived. It asked her to a faraway monastery, hidden deep in the spooky Carpathian mountains. There, in a crumbling forgotten place, was something Lena wanted more than anything, an old leather book that seemed to be alive. The book was filled with weird symbols swirling all over the pages like a crazy dance. They didn't make sense, but Lena felt like she knew them somehow. Then she started hearing whispers. Quiet at first, but they got louder every day, creeping into her thoughts and dreams. Lena, always curious, packed her bags, filling them with tools and books from her life's work. The trip to the monastery was scary. Lena had never ventured into such remote and eerie places before. The road ahead was barely visible through the thick fog that enveloped the forest. Every twist and turn seemed to lead them deeper into the unknown, and the dense woods on either side of the road felt like they were closing in on them. The headlights of the car barely pierced through the darkness, casting long, eerie shadows that danced on the trees. Lena couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched, that something or someone was lurking just beyond the reach of the light. The roads were narrow and winding, twisting through dark forests. The journey felt endless, with each bend in the road revealing yet another stretch of foreboding forest. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches intertwining above the road to form a natural tunnel that blocked out the sky. The mist clung to the ground, swirling around the car's tires as they moved forward. Lena's heart raced with every bump and jolt, the silence inside the car only amplifying her anxiety. She glanced at Mihai, hoping for some reassurance, but his stern expression offered none. The air smelled like pine and wet dirt. It was a scent that was both refreshing and unsettling, a reminder of how far they were from civilization. The forest floor was covered in a thick layer of pine needles, muffling the sound of their progress. Lena rolled down the window slightly, letting the cool, damp air fill the car. It was a small comfort in an otherwise tense situation. She tried to focus on the natural beauty around her, but the oppressive atmosphere made it difficult to appreciate. Her guide, Mihai, was quiet and serious. He had been recommended by a local historian as the best person to lead her to the monastery. His knowledge of the area was unparalleled, but his demeanor was far from comforting. He kept his eyes on the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Lena wondered what thoughts were running through his mind, but she didn't dare to ask. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken fears and uncertainties. He didn't say much, which made Lena even more nervous. She tried to make small talk, asking about the history of the monastery and the legends surrounding it, but Mihai's responses were brief and to the point. It was clear that he preferred silence, and Lena eventually gave up, retreating into her own thoughts. She couldn't help but wonder if she had made a mistake in coming here. The stories she had heard about the monastery were filled with mystery and danger, and now that she was so close, the reality of it all was starting to sink in. Finally they reached the monastery. It stood on a hill, its dark silhouette stark against the stormy sky. The building was massive, its stone walls towering over the surrounding landscape. Lena felt a chill run down her spine as she took in the sight. The monastery looked like something out of a Gothic novel, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The mist that surrounded it only added to its eerie atmosphere, making it seem like it was floating in a sea of clouds. It was huge and dark against the stormy sky. The clouds above were thick and heavy, threatening to unleash a downpour at any moment. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the monastery for a brief second and casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Lena took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The answers she sought were inside those ancient walls, and she was determined to find them. The old stone walls seemed to suck up all the light, leaving Lena standing in a darkness she couldn't understand. It was as if the monastery itself was alive, its very stones imbued with centuries of secrets and forgotten knowledge. Lena felt a sense of foreboding as she approached the entrance, the weight of history pressing down on her. She reached out to touch the cold, rough surface of the wall, feeling a connection to the countless others who had stood in this same spot over the years. This was the home of the forgotten language, and Lena, with her smarts and curiosity, was about to find out its secrets. She had spent years studying ancient texts and deciphering long-lost languages, and now she was on the brink of a major discovery. The monastery held the key to unlocking a forgotten chapter of history, and Lena was determined to uncover it. With a final glance at Mihai, who gave her a nod of encouragement, she stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey into the unknown had only just begun. The giant wooden doors creaked open like they hadn't been touched in ages. Inside, the air was cold and stale and smelled like old incense and something rotten. Lena stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The monastery felt heavy, full of sadness and age. Mihai stayed outside, his face like a statue. Lena was alone now, walking into the unknown. A man appeared from the shadows. Father Gregor, the only one left at the monastery. His face was old and wrinkled, and his eyes seemed to hold a lot of secrets. "Welcome, Miss Marshall," he said slowly, his voice heavy. "You've come a long way for knowledge. I hope you're ready for what it costs." Lena realized this wasn't a welcome, it was a warning. Father Gregor led her deeper into the monastery. They entered a small empty room. The air was thick with dust and the silence was almost deafening. It felt as though the room had been untouched for centuries, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. The walls, once vibrant with color, were now faded and peeling, revealing the passage of time. Lena could almost hear the whispers of the past, echoing faintly in the stillness. She shivered, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This place was ancient, older than she could comprehend, and it held secrets that were waiting to be uncovered. The only light came from a broken window covered with wood. Moonlight filtered through the cracks, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The beams of light seemed to dance, creating an almost hypnotic pattern that drew Lena's gaze. She felt a strange sense of foreboding, as if the room itself was alive and watching her every move. The window, though broken and boarded up, seemed to be the only connection to the outside world, a world that felt distant and unreachable. Lena took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knew she had to stay focused, but the atmosphere was making it difficult. In the middle of the room on a stone stand was the book. It was the centerpiece of the room, drawing all attention to itself. The stone pedestal was rough and weathered, a stark contrast to the delicate pages of the book it held. Lena approached it cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The book seemed to emanate a strange energy, a presence that was almost palpable. It was as if the book was aware of her, waiting for her to make the first move. Lena hesitated, feeling a mix of curiosity and fear. This was what she had come for, but now that she was here, she wasn't sure she was ready. It was smaller than Lena expected, but it felt powerful, like it was buzzing. The book seemed to hum with a life of its own, a soft, almost imperceptible vibration that she could feel in her fingertips. The glow that surrounded it was faint, but unmistakable, a sign that this was no ordinary book. Lena reached out, her hand trembling slightly. She could feel the energy intensify as she got closer, a tingling sensation that ran up her arm. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, a reminder of the power that lay within those pages. She knew she had to be careful, but the pull was irresistible. The leather cover was cracked and dry. It looked fragile, as if it might crumble to dust at any moment. The texture was rough under her fingers, a stark reminder of the book's age. Lena traced the intricate patterns on the cover, marveling at the craftsmanship. Each crack and crease told a story, a testament to the countless hands that had held it before her. She wondered about the people who had read its pages, the secrets they had uncovered, and the knowledge they had gained. This book was a link to the past, a bridge between worlds, and Lena felt honored to be holding it. It felt strangely cold, and Lena thought she felt it vibrate. The sensation was unsettling, a stark contrast to the warmth of her own skin. It was as if the book was alive, responding to her touch. Lena's mind raced with possibilities, each one more fantastical than the last. She could feel the weight of the book's history, the knowledge it contained, pressing down on her. It was a heavy burden, but one she was willing to bear. She knew that this book held the answers she sought, and she was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. "This language," Father Gregor whispered, "it's not for our world. It is ancient, older than time itself. It speaks of things that should not be known, of powers that should not be wielded. You must be careful, Lena. This book is dangerous, and its knowledge comes at a price." His voice was low and filled with a sense of urgency. Lena could see the concern in his eyes, the fear that lurked just beneath the surface. She knew that he was right, that the book was not to be taken lightly, but she also knew that she had no choice. She had to know the truth, no matter the risk. "Be careful, Miss Marshall. These words have teeth. They can bite." Father Gregor's warning echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the danger she faced. Lena nodded, her resolve hardening. She knew the risks, but she was willing to take them. The book held the answers she needed, and she was determined to uncover them. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. She had to be. The fate of the world depended on it. Lena's heart pounded. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, a mix of fear and excitement. The weight of the book in her hands was a constant reminder of the task ahead. She knew that she was standing on the precipice of something monumental, something that could change the course of history. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. She took another deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. She had to see this through, no matter the cost. She felt like she was staring into a deep, dark hole, and it was staring back. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever, an endless void that threatened to swallow her whole. But Lena stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. She knew that the answers she sought lay within that darkness, and she was determined to find them. She took a step forward, her resolve unwavering. The journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but she was ready. She had to be. The fate of the world depended on it. Even though she felt uneasy, Lena opened the book. The pages were thin and delicate and smelled like old tombs. The symbols, written in super dark ink, seemed to move and swirl. Lena felt familiar with them. Then, she heard a low hum coming from the book, and from deep below the monastery, a sound echoed that made her shiver. Lena spent days and nights studying the book in a small room at a nearby inn. The symbols, once strange, started to make sense. Each one was like a door to a place humans weren't supposed to go. The more she learned, the more uneasy she felt. The line between what was real and what was a dream started to blur. Lena couldn't sleep. Her dreams were filled with scary images and whispers. She'd wake up in the middle of the night covered in sweat, hearing strange sounds. The quiet of the inn made the whispers worse, like they were coming from the walls. She tried to tell herself it was just her imagination, but deep down, she was terrified. The whispers felt real. Lena panicked. She found a notebook filled with writing, her writing, but she didn't remember writing it. The words were in the language from the book. They talked about powerful beings, gateways, and a hidden darkness waiting to be set free. Lena was terrified. The book wasn't just a book, it was alive, and its power was spreading. She needed help. Scared and desperate, Lena ran back to the monastery. She found Father Gregor praying in the chapel. "Father," she gasped, "I need your help. The book, it's talking to me." Father Gregor looked at her with pity. He had warned her. Now the darkness was inside her and he wasn't sure he could help. Lena told Father Gregor about the whispers and the strange writing. He knew the book's power. "The language," he rasped. "It's not meant to be spoken, not by us. It's a key, a gateway to places we shouldn't go." Lena shivered. The book was a bridge between worlds, and she had opened a door she couldn't close. "The symbols," he continued, "they're locks on doors that should stay locked. By speaking them, even in your mind, you're letting something in." Lena felt a terrible dread. The monastery felt like a prison. The whispers grew louder, turning into hisses. Back at the inn, the glyphs seemed to be everywhere, on the walls, in the wood, in the candlelight. Her dreams were nightmares, filled with strange creatures and endless whispers. She tried to destroy the notebook, but the words wouldn't disappear. Almost crazy, Lena went back to Father Gregor. He listened as she described the whispers and the feeling that she was losing her mind. "The language," he whispered. "It remembers. It's in your blood now, a dark gift. It won't be silenced easily." He talked about ancient rituals and sacrifices, but Lena knew she had been chosen for something terrible. The whispers hissed, promising power and forbidden knowledge. One night, the whispers became one voice, taking over Lena's mind. It told her about a ritual, a merging of worlds. Lena, no longer in control, went back to the monastery. The air crackled with energy. Shadows danced like living things. Lena reached for the book. As her fingers touched it, power surged through her. The symbols glowed. The whispers chanted, shaking the monastery. "Awaken," they commanded. "Awaken and claim your prize." The chanting grew louder. Lena felt herself moving towards the book, her hand tracing the symbols. The whispers became words on her lips. She tasted the ancient language, its power flowing through her. Each word she spoke felt like breaking a barrier. The shadows twisted into menacing shapes. Lena tried to fight back, but the language was too strong. Lena spoke the last word, a terrible sound that felt like fire. The room flashed with light and the air smelled like burning, the walls cracked. Then the shadows became real. Not just blurry shapes, but dark creatures twisting and growing. The air filled with screams and growls. Lena collapsed, her mind filled with horror. The book glowed beside her, the source of the chaos. Mihai heard the screams and saw the strange light. He ran into the monastery with his axe. He had tried to warn Lena. He found her on the floor, surrounded by shadow creatures. Mihai roared and attacked, his axe cutting through the shadows. But they kept coming back, drawn to the glowing book. Mihai knew what he had to do. He grabbed the book and Lena and ran for the chapel. He remembered a ritual to seal the gateway. The shadows chased him, but he fought them off. He had to reach the chapel. He had to save Lena and the world. Mihai carried Lena through the crumbling monastery, the book heavy in his hand. He could feel the shadows closing in. He stumbled through the library, books falling around him. Lena whispered in the forgotten language, the words invading his mind. He had hoped she would be strong enough to resist the book, but he was wrong. Mihai reached the chapel and laid Lena down. The book pulsed with light. He knew he had to act fast. He remembered seeing Father Gregor perform the ritual years ago. He gathered the things he needed, a silver cup, holy water, and a book of incantations. As Mihai chanted, the shadows grew stronger, their dark forms twisting and writhing as if alive. The ancient words he spoke resonated through the chapel, each syllable a hammer blow against the encroaching darkness. His voice, though weary, held a power that seemed to draw strength from the very air around him. The shadows, sensing the potency of his incantation, recoiled momentarily before surging forward with renewed vigor. Mihai's eyes, closed in concentration, missed the subtle changes in the room, the flickering candles, the shifting shadows, the growing sense of dread that permeated the air. He was a man on the edge, fighting not just for his life but for the very soul of the chapel. The creatures attacked the chapel doors with a ferocity that shook the very foundations of the ancient building. Their claws scraped against the wood, leaving deep gouges that oozed a dark, viscous substance. Each impact was a testament to their relentless determination to break through the barrier that kept them at bay. The doors, though sturdy, began to show signs of strain, the wood splintering under the onslaught. Mihai could hear their guttural growls and hisses, a cacophony of malevolence that threatened to drown out his chanting. He knew that if the doors gave way, all would be lost. The creatures were not just mindless beasts, they were driven by a dark intelligence, a malevolent force that sought to consume everything in its path. He poured the holy water into the cup and kept chanting, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. The water, blessed by rituals long forgotten, shimmered with a faint ethereal light. As it filled the goblet, Mihai felt a surge of hope. This was no ordinary water, it was a conduit for the divine, a weapon against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. He raised the cup to his lips, whispering a prayer of protection before taking a sip. The liquid was cool and refreshing, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the room. It filled him with a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that he was not alone in this battle. Lena screamed, her body shaking with fear. The book glowed brighter, its pages turning of their own accord as if guided by an unseen hand. Mihai finished the ritual, his voice rising to a crescendo. The final words of the incantation echoed through the chapel, a clarion call that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. Lena's scream was a raw, primal sound, a manifestation of the terror that gripped her heart. She could feel the power of the book, a tangible force that pulsed with a life of its own. The glow intensified, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and for a moment it seemed as if the entire room was bathed in an otherworldly light. The light from the book flashed, a blinding burst that filled the room with an intense, searing brilliance. It was as if a star had been born within the confines of the chapel, its radiance banishing the shadows and driving back the darkness. The creatures outside the doors shrieked in agony, their cries a symphony of despair. The light was a purifying force, a beacon of hope that cut through the malevolence that had taken root in the chapel. Mihai shielded his eyes, the brilliance almost too much to bear. But he knew that this was the moment of truth, the culmination of all their efforts. The light was their salvation, a divine intervention that promised to cleanse the chapel of its dark taint. The shadows shrieked and faded, their forms dissolving into nothingness. Then, silence. An eerie calm settled over the chapel, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned just moments before. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense and the faint, lingering traces of the holy water. Mihai stood in the center of the room, his chest heaving with exertion. The battle was over, but the cost had been high. The silence was almost deafening, a reminder of the void that had been left in the wake of the struggle. It was a moment of respite, a brief lull before the next storm. Mihai lay on the floor, bruised and exhausted. The book lay closed beside him, its power temporarily contained. He could feel the weight of his actions, the toll that the ritual had taken on his body and soul. Every muscle ached, every breath was a struggle, but he had succeeded. The darkness had been driven back, if only for a time. The book, though dormant, still held a sinister presence, a reminder of the constant threat that loomed over them. Mihai knew that this was not the end, but merely a reprieve. The battle would continue, and he would need to be ready. He picked it up, its weight a reminder of its power. The book was heavy, not just in a physical sense, but with the burden of the knowledge it contained. It was a relic of a bygone era, a testament to the ancient forces that still held sway over the world. Mihai could feel the energy pulsing through its pages, a dark and malevolent force that sought to break free. He held it close, knowing that it was both a weapon and a curse. The power it held was immense, but it came at a great cost. It was a responsibility that he could not take lightly. Lena was safe, but her mind was damaged. The ordeal had left her shaken, her eyes wide with shock. She sat in the corner of the room, her body trembling as she tried to process what had happened. The terror she had experienced was etched into her very being, a scar that would take time to heal. Mihai approached her slowly, his heart heavy with guilt. He had saved her, but at what cost? The darkness had left its mark on her, a reminder of the horrors they had faced. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched her shoulder. She flinched but did not pull away. They were both survivors, but the road to recovery would be long and arduous. The darkness was gone for now. The chapel, once a place of sanctuary, had become a battleground. The air was still, the oppressive weight of the darkness lifted, but Mihai knew that this was only a temporary victory. The forces they had faced were ancient and powerful, and they would not rest for long. The chapel, though quiet, still held an air of unease, a sense that the battle was far from over. The subtle light that filtered through the windows was a reminder of the hope that still remained, but it was a fragile thing, easily extinguished. But the book remained, waiting for its next chance to unleash its chaos. It sat on the table, its dark aura a stark contrast to the faint light that filled the room. The pages, though still, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, a reminder of the power that lay within. Mihai knew that they could not let their guard down. The book was a constant threat, a ticking time bomb that could go off at any moment. It was a symbol of the darkness that still lurked in the shadows, waiting for its chance to strike. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The forgotten language was silent, but its whispers remained. The air was filled with a faint, almost imperceptible murmur, a reminder of the ancient forces that still held sway over the world. The whispers were a constant presence, a reminder that the darkness was never truly gone. Mihai could hear them, a faint echo at the edge of his consciousness. They were a warning, a reminder that the battle was not over. The book, though silent, still held a power that could not be ignored. It was a constant threat, a reminder of the darkness that still lurked in the shadows. The Codex Endures.